So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Fujan Zhang, and I have a doctorate in clinical psych, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a life coach. And I've been doing this for about 25 years. I've been doing coaching and psychotherapy for about 25 years. And out of everything that I've learned, I also created a new model in psychotherapy, which is copyrighted and it's being taught to the other therapists. And it's published. It's called Awareness Integration Model, which will go through every aspect of life. And it minimizes depression, it minimizes anxiety, and raises self-esteem. And because we work in every area of life, you kind of work through every aspect, plus all the childhood stuff that has come up. So we bring in-depth therapy, which usually takes about 3 to 4 years, and shorten it up. We do kind of like a laser surgery with it, with about maybe like between 10 to 20 sessions. So it's been really worth it for a lot of people to take on that task, because you feel lighter after that. Like you feel you've got the skills to move on with the rest of life as you like. So I'm going to tell you some of the things that I have, some of the products, and then I'm going to be here a little bit after the lecture, and then I'm going to be at a table over there. So if you want to come back over there and purchase some of this, that will be available.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Zaini, for being here today. This is such a nice, small, intimate group, so they can get a lot more out of it because it's such a smaller group. But thank you so much. She has so many credentials, and we don't have I don't want to take your time to go through your credentials, but I really, really like your sessions, and we're so proud to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And we'll see you afterwards at, at your table, right?
Sure, and if people are coming, just let them come in. If there's any part of the lecture they can enjoy, they can just come in and enjoy that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you.
So I want to tell you especially about this. This was a 2-day workshop about relationship, and the whole workshop is on here. It's about 8 CDs, 8 DVDs actually, which we go through. Every exercise that we did at the workshop is in here. So just if you want it, come and talk to me about it. It's in English, and you can enjoy it and sit with your partner or alone and learn a lot and go through the exercises. If you have anyone in your family or yourself which is going through some sort of an addiction. And addiction, I don't mean just with drugs and alcohol. We've got now internet. We've got many aspects. Food, I have that, and many other things that we have addiction for. This is actually in Persian. This is Dr. Shamsian, Majid Molavi Puranai, and the two of them are psychotherapists and chemical dependency counselor. I've also worked with addiction for about 25 years, so you get the conversation from the family members and toward the family members, and information about addiction and the dynamic of addiction. So this is also available. These are 4 sets of CDs, audio CDs. They're like hypnotic messages where you can listen for about 30 days. And any type of hypnotic messages, they will be yours after about 30 days when you use them. So one of them is about relaxing your body. One of them is for sleep. I know a lot of people go through insomnia. And one of them is taking care of your body, kind of like detoxing yourself, getting connected with your body and losing weight. Another one is releasing emotions. I'm sure any of you have probably experienced that the emotions got you rather than you getting the emotions sometimes. So you got the CD to kind of release the emotion and teach you how to release the emotions. And then I have this book, which is it's Persian. It's written by my cousin, who is a novelist, who's an award-winning novelist, and it's a psychological novel. This one is in Persian, so whomever can read and write Persian should probably get this. This is about all the relationships and all the messages that we actually get through generation, and kind of defines what relationships are. So for yourself or your family members, this is really gotten great reviews. And I have 3 other books here, which are not written by me, but they're great resources. They are the latest that are out in the concept of relationship. So I wanted to bring it so you guys can see it and look at it, and if you then just go to Amazon.com and purchase it if you like. Okay? So I'm going to ask, how many of you are married? Okay. How many are planning to get married? Down here? Okay. She's close, she's shooting. She's hiding herself. Has anybody, I mean, I'm sure people have been through relationships and breakups, have fought before? Okay, good. So we're talking about how to be a lover and not a fighter. So what we're going to talk about is two kind of concepts today. One, what happens inside of you? Because it takes you to be in a relationship. So you know how a fight starts? It usually starts inside of you. And then somehow it gets out, right? So we're going to look at both aspects. One, what's inside, what happens inside of you, and then how do you deliver externally, and then what happens externally. So everybody who decides to go into an intimate relationship goes into an intimate relationship because, give me an answer. Anything that comes, it's all the right answer.
Joy.
Joy. What else?
Happiness.
Happiness.
Company.
Company.
Companionship.
Companionship.
Growth.
Growth.
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Now, this side, you gotta win. Come on. Come on, guys. Why do you go into relationships?
Happiness.
Happiness.
Peace,
Peace.
love.
That's a wrong
Love.
thing to go into.
Yes.
Don't want to be alone.
You don't want to be alone. You know? And it's like all of us had this day when we connected with someone where one day we catch ourselves thinking about them and just smiling, right? And we kind of, when we do that, it's like, oh, I've got somebody who I can have that peace, joy, fun, and love, and I want to be with them, which creates that, you know, the union, the companionship that we actually look for. That's when we're ready. We're ready for a relationship, right? So when we look at years and years of relationship, we're not talking about long years of relationship, and because today is about marriage here, we're going to talk about marriage and long-term relationships, right? When we've looked at long-term relationships, they're pretty much predictable stages of relationship, all right? So I'm going to tell you, so if you've been married, you probably can find yourself in somewhere at this stages. If you're not married, and I know that in all the mythical stories, they said that you got to do everything until you're married, and right after the wedding day,
You're dead.
no, happily ever after. No, you've been married. That's
Die a
what
little
I
bit
said.
every
It's usually like, you know, remember you guys, girls, we got raised with Cinderella, right? Remember? It's all, we get to the wedding and then it's happily ever after, right? So I just want to tell you that although it can be happily ever after, there's just some bumps in the road. So I want to tell you so that when your fantasies are crushed, you remember me and remember what we talked about and hang in there, all right? So the first stage is honeymoon stage. So what do we do in the honeymoon stage? Obviously, it's supposed to be romantic, or why the hell would people get together? So it has to be that way. We're thinking about the person, we're always thinking about us. It's only like me and you and how all of the things are going toward that. It's really not about I at that moment. We focus only on the positive. And if we don't like something, what do we say? Don't worry, I'll change him. I'll show him this is not the right way. Or, you know, the men say they like something and they're hoping that that would stay and they would never change. And the parts of her that they don't like, they're like, I'm so special that those sides will never come up with me. Obviously must have happened with other people, right? So we only look at the positive things and not the negative things. Because if we look at the negative things, why would I want to be with that person? So at that place, I really have to be with the person with all the positive things. Life revolves around our mate at that time. Right? We're sitting at work, we get a text from that person. Everything in the world goes away. I have to answer this text now. Or it's a phone call. My heart just drops and everything has to go away and it becomes an emergency at that moment. We'll get out of meetings, we'll do everything to answer that phone call. So life revolves around our mate. No sacrifices is too great at that moment. This feeling of oneness, missing and needing each other. I miss you. We haven't seen each other for 2 hours and suddenly I miss you and I can't live without you at that moment. obviously I've only known you for 2 days, but it feels like 20 years. It feels like I've known you all my life. Those are the true aspects. And I'm not telling you this as if it's fake. It's real. It really feels real, right? Now, why? Now, this thing, they've said it takes about 3 months to 3 years. But in here it says I've written for you 6 weeks to 6 months because this is more realistic. It takes about that long. Then it goes away. But before it goes away, Helen Fisher, who is an anthropologist, has done a lot of research on this. And she did a research, and there's a book by her called Why We Love. So if you really like to get her work, just go ahead and get that book. And she explains why we love. And you know how animals have mating seasons? And they do particular games in order to find their mate? Well, this is what the romantic love, that chemical aspect that happens in our body, that's our game. If that doesn't happen, the same as animals wouldn't get together, humans wouldn't get together. So in order to get together, in order to get humans together, in order to procreate, the nature has given us this type of chemicals, right? This is what happens to us. So when the chemicals pour in, at that moment, those are the things that happens. So young, you know. This is where the fantasy breaks. One point of it is that the chemicals kind of go away. Okay. By the way, let me give you a parenthesis. Same thing with another research by Helen Fisher. They have done this research with people who have been married and they've claimed that they are still in love after 40, 50 years, after long year marriages. And when they did brain scans, those group who stated they're still in love with each other after many years, the place in their brain was activated exactly the same as they were in their honeymoon stage. So there's hope. Okay. Now, where the fantasy breaks, and I call it power struggle phase, about after 3 months, 6 months, if you're lucky, a year, that concept of I only see the positive in my mate, and I only bring my positive, changes a bit. So now I begin to see that my mate is not all the ideal thing that I've made him or her to be. And suddenly, everything that I loved about him, and not everything, but some of the things that I really enjoyed about them, that annoys me. Like if I was an isolated person and I loved getting someone who was loud and out there and they complimented me and they put me out there. Now after a while, their loudness is like, okay, enough already. You're being too loud now. Calm it down. Okay? So slowly but surely their negative aspect keeps popping up for us. And we keep looking at it. Now I begins to matter. Remember it was just we, and then I wasn't even there. Now I begin to matter. My wishes, my needs, my desires. Now they need to be there. And therefore I'm going to take a stand for them. I'm going to request them. I'm going to want them. And I'm going to have my mate start giving it. So it feels like I've been giving the sacrifice 3 to 6 months. Now it's time for me to start withdrawing this investment that I've put in. So now it's your time to start giving me. Well, the other person obviously feels the same. So they think they've done the investment too, and it's your time to give. Because for them, they've also been given, right? So people go through the shock, the awareness of what they want. Sometimes in this stage, people freak out and they leave relationships. Because at the beginning, they've made this up to be, you're my soulmate, you're the one, I've never felt this way about anybody else. So then when this part comes that, oh, this honeymoon stage is over, then they think that it must be just not the right person. I just have to go find another person that gives me the same emotions and does everything I want. But they pretty much go to another one, and after a while, the same stage happens, right? If they can't work out, if they don't have the communication skills to pass through this, Usually they go into a misery stage. A misery stage means we've kind of given up. You know, we figure, I can't change him, I can't change her, she's always going to be this way, that's just her character, it's because of her parents, it's because of this, it's because of that. And we kind of like give up on our wants and desires and the things that we wanted to have in the relationship. Maybe we bargained, maybe we negotiated, maybe we didn't get what we want to get, and then we go into kind of like a hopeless place in here. So we feel resigned. There are ways that if people have had different reasons, whether they have reasons because of their children or because of any other scenario, they might just kind of exit internally because they don't want to exit from the relationship. So how do people exit internally? They get depressed. They withdraw, right? They go to work, long hours. They won't come back home. Addiction. It's a way of leaving. So they'll put their pleasure, their focus onto something else, and they'll put 10 to 20% of their life and attention on the marriage and on the relationship and letting it be. External exit, separation, divorces, homicide, no things, suicide, no things, or affairs. Affairs usually are also an external way. I don't get what I want from my mate. Somebody else out there appears that is going to give me that fun and play, so I'm just going to distract myself and go there. And this stage can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 years. I've had people with marriages of 50 years. And what's happening is they go into misery stage, and then they're old enough now that they figure, why should I let go? Because I'm not going to be with anybody else. And then they just kind of like stay in that misery stage. Maybe before their death, they look at their partner and say, hey, these couple of things weren't that bad either. And they'll, get themselves out of the misery stage. Hopefully, even within the misery stage or within the power struggle stage, there is an enlightenment stage. And the reason I call that is because somehow at one point, maybe a light bulb comes. Maybe we've talked to a therapist or a counselor. Maybe we talked to a friend. Maybe we talked to a family member. Maybe there was some point that we suddenly looked at and say, so far I've looked at it that obviously I'm perfect and he or she is the bad and wrong one and can't figure it out. And maybe in this stage, I would start looking and say, maybe I have something to do with this. And at this point, I start looking at what do I do? How am I thinking? What am I feeling? How am I behaving? What am I putting in this relationship that's creating this result? So this result is not something that the other person just created, but this result is something that I created. So if I'm responsible for at least my end, so what do I do? How do I shift it? What do I bring something else and another perspective into this relationship to get it out of the rut that it is right now? And usually in this stage, it's like we kind of catch on that I'm not looking for necessarily a perfect person because there is not a perfect person. But the one that I love, that is out there, I got to see perfect in them. Like, what is it about them that it's normal, that it's there, and I can see the perfect in them. And I can shift my idea about the perfect and the idealism rather than holding the idealism. And then beside this, you go into the mutual stage, which in that place you create the honesty, you create intimacy and closeness again. You get to know your partner as who she or he is rather than the one you assumed. And I don't know if you guys have this experience or not, but before marriage, usually you have a partner in mind. You usually had some sort of a fantasy about her or him. Or you've created a way where you've been dating, and then you've picked up all the good characters you liked and put them on one list, and all the characters you didn't like and you put them on one list, and you said the mate I want is the one who has all the good characters. And the one that has all the good characters of my mother and all the good characters of my father, but it has nothing that I didn't like about my mother or father, so I'm going to put all of those in the other list also. Now, who I want is not going to have any negative, and it's just going to be perfect, all of these positive ones. Right? That's the image. Now we go out, select who's out there, and try to match them with this. And even if they don't match up, we figure, especially first marriages, we figure, I'll just make him or her to this one. And then in mutual respect stage is the stage that I get to see the person for who the person is. And you're not going to get that in the first 2-3 months or even maybe the first year. Because getting to know a human being, you've got to have time before you see different stages for them. So you've got to see them through different decision makings, through different aspects, to know who this person really is, right? So that's where mutual stage comes. And you get to care for this person and love this person for who they are. And at this time is accepting each other's also behaviors, opinions, and thought processes, and encouraging the person to be who they are, not encouraging them to be who you want them to be. So you actually get to like, not only love, but you get to like this person that you're with. And respecting their needs and point of view, knowing what their dreams and aspirations are, and supporting them to grow who they are. And knowing that as you're going this way, that you're obviously going to at times grow apart, in how to come back and go into a parallel place and reunite as each one of you grows through the years. Because you're certainly going to grow, and you're not always going to grow, I'm not even going to say not always, you're never going to grow in the same speed, in the same space, or in the same place. So it's always going to be coming back and reuniting yourself, because that's just how life works. Okay, so how to please a woman. Love her, die for her, take her to dinner, miss the game for her, buy her jewelry, be interested in what she has to say. How to please a man? Show up naked and bring beer. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Men are much more complex. All right. So far, okay? Any questions? Go ahead.
So I'm reaching my, we've been engaged, but we've been dating for 9 years. And so through that time, we've had friends that have gotten together, broken up, got together, got engaged, got married, and then got divorced, all throughout that. And when we were younger, we were seeing a lot of our couple friends staying together for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then breaking up, and then they immediately date someone else, and within a year and a half, they're engaged, then they're married. Do you find that the process to go through each of these stages is accelerated as you get older? Because a lot of times we hear, well, they're in their 30s now, so it's different. A year and a half is really like 5 years when you're in your 20s. Or do you find that, because there's maturity that comes along with that and finding yourself, like you were saying, do you see that's the case, or do you think that equal amount of time should be spent sort of in each stage, or at least sort of in the relationship as you get older?
I think there are a couple of things that happens. One is that as we get older and we date a lot and we get into a marriage and divorce, marriage makes us grow up. Marriage just grows you up. Divorce makes you more grown up. And so by the time you've been married and divorced, you kind of get you capture what you really want. So you might go again with some fantasies into the next one, or don't know how to assess, or you don't have skills. Because many times when you're in a marriage, if you don't get into the enlightenment stage that we talked about, and you only see and got divorced because you thought it was somebody else's fault, then they come in and they take the same skills into the next relationship, and they screw it up again. Many times I have couples who come and see me, and as they're sitting there being nasty and threatening each other for a divorce, there's a question I ask. I said, if I take exactly who you are today in this room and every day that you are in your life right now, and I wanted to take you to a date to a new person, would you be attractive? And they look at themselves and they're like, okay. You have to change to even be attractive to another person. They're like, yeah. I said, could you create those changes for the one you're with? Because you're just not attractive the way you are today. But they don't realize it, because as I said at one point, we get so righteous, that's obviously I'm great and you're bad and wrong. So they go to another one. Another concept with the breakup and divorce is, the same way we all have mythical concepts about marriage and fantasy, it's forever, right? So until death do us apart. So it's been ingrained in us that when you get married, it's a lifetime. So when you have your first divorce, that fantasy breaks. So from there on, leaving is no longer that huge, what the hell am I going to do? Or, the mythical concept got broken and we mourn for it. So there's a mourning that happens not only for the relationship, but for the fantasy. And when that fantasy breaks, then from there on, the breaking up, you know you survive afterward. So it's a bit easier. That's why they say 50% marriages go through divorce, right? Second divorces, 60 to 65%. Third divorces, 70% rate of divorce. So that's breakup. Okay, any other questions? Or should we go on with communication skills? All right. So let's define communication first. Communication, definition is pretty much transferring a message in any format to another human being, right? Exchange of thoughts, emotions, messages, information by different ways. Speech, signals, writing, behaviors. And it's a process of transferring this information from one person to another. Now I want you to be with me on this because I love this quote. Between what I think, what I want to say, what I believe I'm actually saying, what I say, what you want to hear, what you actually hear, what you believe you understand, what you want to understand, and what you actually understand, there are at least 9 possibilities for misunderstanding. Do you get how complex this concept is? And we just open our mouth and blah, 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 blah. And we figure it's all there. So Albert Mehrabian, communication, he did the research in UCLA. He's a professor at UCLA. And he said 7% of the meaning of what we actually talk about in communication comes from what we say. Only 7% gives the message of what we want to say to another person. Right? 38% is the way we say it, the tonality, our, the words, the way we put the words together, and 55% is what you see. You know? So you can get that sometimes you say something and the other person gets hurt or we're like, what? What did I say? And it might be the whole demeanor, everything about you that is giving another message. But the ambiance is creating something else rather than words. So you can clarify and be really professional, politically correct in the way you say things. But what happens to the rest of you? The rest of you's got to kind of come with it. Because if it doesn't, there's a duality in communication, and then it brings communication issues and glitches and misunderstandings. Because the person gets one thing from one part of you and another message completely from another part. Another way is the way we behave, which might be different than what we say, right? So she says, all I'm asking is a little respect, and then her t-shirt says what? I'm with the stupid. So what you see sometimes the behavior is completely something else rather than what we say we want. And another thing about this cartoon is many times we want something from the other person, but we're not really looking at, am I giving him or her the same thing? So I claim that I want respect, but am I really with my behavior giving the other person respect or not? So that's also something to look at as you're doing the communication. So remember when we talked at the beginning, I said, remember, we're going to consistently look at 2 aspects. One, what happens inside of me, which begins the communication, and then what happens externally, which transfers the communication. Okay? So both have to be aligned before communication lands. All right? So I'm sure all of you have heard or maybe read John Gray, right? And John Gray is good because of the differences. Now, the brain of a man and a woman are different. The wants are similar. So we're still looking at just communication aspects. What men and women really want are very similar. They all want love, they want respect, they want trust. Human being just wants that. That's what human being wants. But this is just how men and women are different in the way that they pick up and analyze data and how they are in communication. So a man's sense of self is really defined through his ability to achieve the results. So if you attack a man on his results, he's going to be really heartbroken. His ego is really going to be crushed in that way. A woman's sense of self is defined through their feeling and the quality of the relationship, right? So yes, we want the mushy stuff. What can we say? That's how our brain really operates. We want the mushy stuff. Again, just kidding, but this is the difference between the men's. They want sex, we want chocolate, which affects exactly as sex. Or a woman, no matter how beautiful they are, they think they're really fat. And many men, no matter what they look like, they feel handsome. Because they're not visual. They're visual about looking at women. They're not necessarily visual when they look at themselves on the mirror. So again, John Gray says, this is him. He talks most comfortably when they're side by side. Have you guys seen sports with men? I mean, they're not sitting together talking like this usually, right? They're talking over doing something, whether they're playing golf or they're playing tennis, but they're doing something together. And that's how communication happens. Have you seen men just sitting watching TV and go through sports? They have best dialogues, even intimate dialogues, but while watching something else, rather than being intimate with each other in that way of communication. So when a woman says, look at my eyes while we're talking, it's like, what? I don't have to. So it's almost like it's very intimidating sometimes for them. By the way, when I say this, I would really say most, because we're all different. So when I say men, does not mean all men. You're going to find yourself somewhere in the middle of this, in that perspective. Because it all depends. If men have been raised by women, obviously if their whole surrounding has been females, they've adapted to a little bit of the way that females were. If they were always just with men, maybe they're more in that end of spectrum. So there's difference in that too. Provides advice and tactile support, right? So most men, when you sit down and talk to them, they want to find the solution. Where's the problem? Where's the solution? How are we going to create the solution? Let me give you the advice and be done with it. All the rest, it just sounds like nagging. It does. Tend to prefer direct and succinct language without detail. Tend to be competitive. Even in their own relationship, they're competing. Because that's just the way that the brain is set up. They naturally show affection by doing things for people, rather than always saying it verbally. And yes, female are much more in a way of wanting to hear it. The audio is sexy. For men, visual is sexy. Women, audio, smell. You guys smell good. Focuses on tasks that needs the situation, okay? Women, they tend to listen by nodding, I mean, look, before what we used to do is we all sat together, even in the boonies, we used to go and gather everything, right? Men went hunting. What did they do? They're sitting beside each other, talking really, and then watching and hunt. The women were in the villages doing what? They did agricultural stuff, they take care of the kids, they were sitting there together talking. That's what they did. All right? Our brains have not changed since then. So they tend to elaborate, detailed languages, and many times it's like they just come in and talk about all of their day stuff. All they want to do is they want to talk, they want to be heard, they want to be listened to, they want to be seen. They don't want advice. And the guy is waiting. Okay, which one of this thing is a problem that I can solve really and then be done with this conversation? All right? So they show affection verbally by sharing thoughts and feeling, and tactile. Usually they want to hug, they want to touch, they want to squeeze, they want to be with you in that way. They talk mostly comfortably while sitting down face to face and doing nothing else except really chatting. And they focus on social and emotional needs of the situation. This is what we do as therapists. So she says, you left dishes in the living room, the garage is a mess, but you never listen to my opinion, and half the time you don't even look at what we talk about. Look at me when we talk. And I say to the man, she says you didn't notice her haircut. And the guy said, And then the therapist says, he says he's sorry and he'll try to be more sensitive in the future, and he loves you, but he wants to change the subject because he's really not comfortable with confrontation. And of course I can accept accept you for who you are someone I need to change immediately. So we got to, at one point, learn who we are with and learn their style of communication. And even if you were dating multiple people, so like your friend, they were divorced and coming back to another relationship, there is no rule. There's skills of communication, but you've got to start learning how your mate communicates. Because their brain, their culture, the way they've learned to communicate based on who they are, their family style, all of that, it is who they are. So you got to learn how they communicate. So learning who they are and the style of the differences in the language, it will really make life easier, rather than just denying it and saying that the way I communicate is the right one. I had one family that the woman was from a very prominent British family, which they would sit down, they wouldn't really talk, they would talk very low voice, loud voices were rude. So they would talk very low voices, they would, dictate everything, and at the dinner table, they would go around and, share things in very small conversations, and that was perfect, and high etiquette, okay? And that's what they learned, taught every generation. She married this Italian guy from New York. Their family, loud, cussed, screamed, touched each other, went around and go like this to each other, laughed out loud, and they even did half a food fight at the table. Imagine these two got married. And obviously, at the beginning, it was interesting because she felt so relieved and opened up and found her freedom when she was with him, because he was loud and he took her everywhere, and every aspect that she felt really locked down, he created this for her, right? And he felt like class and kind of felt, oh, I can be a little bit more taken care of in a whole, and I can be taken seriously with her, right? So after, when they got to the beyond the honeymoon stage into the power struggle stage, you can imagine what happened. So they had to actually realize the beauty of each style and then modify it so that they could handle it, and how they could behave when they went to each family, and if that concept came in, that they wouldn't get offended consistently. So that's what I mean by learning people's style. Another one is like the confrontation. Many men don't like confrontation because they've learned that if you confront, you fight until you kill. Okay? They don't want to kill the one that they love, and I don't mean necessarily physical, right? But it's almost like they go after the juggler, because that's what the competition says. Don't mess with me, or if you mess with me, I'm going to go after the juggler. So in order not to put themselves in that position, they put themselves away from that position by not going through the confrontation. Because they can handle from 0 to 20, but beyond 20, watch out, I'm going to go straight to 100. So they have to keep themselves under 20 so they won't go there. So they don't like confrontations. Right? Now, if the woman is not aware of that, and the person after they reach 20, they go into their hole and say, leave me alone, what do? You're not hearing me, I'm not being seen, you're leaving me, you're ignoring me, you're not doing anything for me, you don't want to, take care of me, and I'm going to pounce. I'm going to resent you. So these are all just the differences. That when we get to know the differences, we take off the meaning that we're giving it. So a lot of times we can ask and listen to what the person really says as far as their style, and respect their style when we're going to communicate. So communication is effective when, by the way, have you guys remember where you send a text with an emoji and the other person says what? Or sometimes you write a text and the text changes and says whatever he wants to, and the person who's receiving, they're like, what? Right? So that's not an effective communication. So we're going to look at what is an effective communication, right? is when a process of exchange is actually successful satisfaction. So when you say something, the other one really gets what you said. That's when the communication is satisfactory and complete, right? Well, how do you know? Because you're not in their head. Remember the 9 ways that it can be misunderstanding? How are you going to know? The only way you're going to know is to ask, because you're not in their brain. You have no idea what they picked up. What did they make out of it? What did they make it mean in their head? So what do? You keep asking. You keep checking out. So you know that the communication you sent landed. That's pretty much when you say it's effective. The message is sent the same way as received, and there's a mutual understanding of the message that was actually there. Okay? Now there's 2 parts to communication. One is speaking, one is listening. They both have to actually work before communication can be effective. So what do you do when you speak? Do you think before things come out of your mouth? Or is it non-filtered? It's like it comes up. There's a problem with this coming out and blah, 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 saying it. Right? Why is there a problem without a filter? One thing. Your different parts desire different things. So you're going to just say something from this part, and another part comes in and just without the filter says whatever. So then the listener hears something completely different, because now they're mixed messages for them. Does that make sense to you? Have you had that experience before? Where 2 different parts, right? And we all have many different parts who have different desires. And then the communication gets really weird. It's like, do you want to come with me? Yes. But the inside really doesn't want to. It's like there's a part that really wants to please their mate. Another part really doesn't want to. So it says yes. Then the person takes it as face value. They're going there, do their things, and go. And they're like, why aren't you coming? I don't know. Because I don't want to. Didn't you just say I don't want to? Yeah, but So it's like when you don't think and you just laugh, put it out, you make confusion for other people. Then what do we say? Are we being respectful to the listener, to the person? What type of messages are we putting? Are we being articulate in what it is that we want to say? Or we just want to say something to say it? Okay? What is our intention in saying it? And this is where it gets really weird, because I would ask people, what do you want in the session? And it says, I want love and respect. I want this person to hear me and love me. And then in the dialogue, the person starts attacking the other person. And I'm like, if you wanted him to hear you, why are you attacking? Because if you attack someone, you can be for sure knowing they're not going to listen. Because when you attack someone, what they do is what? Hold up. They're going to either protect themselves or attack you back. Where's that loving you and respecting you going to come? Does that make sense? How many times do we do that? Because why? Another part of us is angry at them. And although I say I want love and respect, the part of me that's angry is like, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to make you feel the way I felt. And this one, when it comes out, is never going to get the other one that I want. Does that make sense? Why you should filter things before it comes out of your mouth? Because it's really confusing out there. Right? And then how do we set it up? So usually, we start the fight in our own head. I'm complaining about something in my own head. I start the fight in my own head. I already know what I'm going to tell you in my own head. I already know what you're going to answer me that I don't like in my own head. And I've got my second and third answers already ready for you in my own head when I start talking. Has anybody have that experience? Okay. And then how do I set it up? The person comes in, they completely have no idea. They're coming in, they're kissing you and saying, honey, I love you. And you're like, yeah. And they're like, what? What did I do? You know what you did. Don't play fool with me. You know exactly what you did. You just don't want to take responsibility for it. And then it takes on there. And that was not the way you wanted to set it up, because you're not going to be heard. You're going to create more confusion in that communication. Right? The second piece before that. What wives say, go to the store, lay down the mulch, wash and max the car, get the kids to the school, rent some videos, and finish the rest of the dishes. But the husband here says, go lay down and get some rest. So the second one was listening, right? We got speaking, now listening. What do you listen for? How many of you, now be honest, you don't even have to raise your hand, but how many of you listens just to answer back? Right? The minute the person speaks, you're really not interested in what they say. You're only interested in your communication and how you're going to say it. So you're just waiting for that breath. That the minute they're like between words, you can jump in and say yours. Amen? Yeah. What is the intention in listening? Is the intention to just sort out the things I like? Or is the intention for my listening is to make sure that I come in back and make you listen to me? Or is the intention into listening is to really listen to the person's message? Okay? How are you interpreting the information? Because obviously when you're listening, somebody in your head is taking the message and putting more meaning around it. That's what they're doing. And what tonality does the interpreter inside of you have? Do you have a nice one up here for yourself and others? Do you have a cruel one? Do you have a nasty one? Do you have a disrespectful one? Do you have one that judges the whole world and yourself? The interpreter who's here, who takes everything and makes it up. Right? So the person is talking, somebody in your head is saying, yeah, he's lying. There's an interpreter here. Oh, she's just being like her mother. There's something that keeps talking, right? And the person who's talking in your head, who's that? What is the type of the questions and voices and the type of communication they have? Because they're making up your relationship also, and they're constantly interfering in your communication. So not only you got to get that person inside of you, you got to get to know your partner. Okay? How do we learn communication? By culture, society, environment, surrounding us, what we learn, observe, education, and gender, right? How do we receive it? From all of our five senses. Some people claim they have sixth sense too, but let's just go with the five senses. We receive audio, visual, with all aspects of us, we receive it, right? What do we do with it? We interpret it and translate it in our head, compare it to reality, respond internally by having feelings about it, and then we do some sort of an action, and that's the behavior. That's what we usually do with information and communication. Now, one thing that happens, and is different than the dialogue, is we have a lot of monologues. Monologues means you talk to yourself. Sometimes you think you're talking to others, but you're really talking to yourself. And even if you're sitting and talking to others, but you're not really taking what other person is saying, you're still having a monologue. You're just having the monologue out loud with having somebody sitting in front of you. It's not a dialogue, it's just a monologue. Right? What's a dialogue? It's an exchange between two people. That means I talk, I actually get the other person's information, and then I incorporate that information, and then I bring it into me, and then give it back, and with all fullness, and the other person takes it, takes my information, and brings it, right? How does fights usually look like? The person says, "Why were you late last night?" B says, "Why do you care?" A says, "What do you mean, why do I care? Where were you?" The B says, "You have no right to ask me. What do you mean?" What's happening here? Nobody's responding to the other person. They're just responding to their own monologue, right? It's not like, "Where were you last night?" "Thank you for asking. I was in such and such a place. Were you worried? Why are you asking?" I was worried. I didn't know where you were. Our contract was for you to call me and let me know. How come you didn't tell me? Oh, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. So now I'm actually respond to the complaint or the question. The other one is just, I'm having a reaction to my own monologue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what is needed for a dialogue? Setting up the dialogue. Can I talk to you? Do you have time? Do you have a moment that you can focus on me? Rather than somebody's washing the dishes, the other one was, watching TV, or the other one just walked in, and we just start the dialogue, expecting the person to be in that space, right? So you set it up, clarifying the intention. Right now, I have something in my mind, and all I want is to clarify things, okay? And can you give me 15 minutes, because I just want to clarify something. So my intention is clarification. I'm saying the intention. My intention is for me to sit down and share this with you, and I want you to hear me. I want to be heard. That's my intention. Speaking straight and clear, hold on to your angry mode. Hold on to everything that you're going to do to sting the other person. Just say it straight. You don't need to bring all the attacks from the side, because you're not going to get a straight communication if you're attacking someone. Would you be listening lovingly and caringly if somebody's attacking you? Just not possible, right? So when you're going to start communicating, stop attacking the person. It ain't going to work. Check to see if what you said was received. You say it, and then tell the other person, what are you hearing from me? I want to get to know what you're hearing from me. And if they say whatever it is they're saying, sometimes people say, yeah, and they move on to the answer. I got the answer, but I want to know, you're giving me this answer based on what thought? So tell me what you heard from me first, and then give me your answer. Listen intentionally and with interest with your heart, not only with all of your protection modes, but with your heart. Remember, this is your mate. This is the one you said you love. This is the one you said you want to be with for the rest of your life. This is not the enemy. So put down the guards. Put down your rifles. This is not the enemy. This is really the one you chose. And in your mind, if he or she is that bad, then what the hell are you doing in a relationship? They must not be that bad that you chose to be with them. So then listen to them respectfully. Clarify what you heard, complete the dialogue intention, and reschedule for completion. Even if you figure that you guys are getting activated emotionally, say, okay, I guess we're getting activated right now. We're too much in the emotion. Why don't we kind of go on our way. We'll come back, right? So, yeah, you need to stretch, or we're on top of it. We're on top of it? All right. Now, we got bits. Gottman is actually, and I've got one of his books here. If you can buy books from Gottman, please do. Gottman, his wife and him, I think they're in Washington, Seattle, Washington. They are one of the only psychologists who created a lab, which they attach things to people's body, and they check it with the computer about what happens to their body responses. And their claim is that if somebody comes in to see them, within the first 45 minutes, they can tell you whether you're going to divorce or not. Only but physiological responses of your body. Because when they say, they look at how people fight and how their fights actually affect the other person's body and their own body. And when their level of anxiety, stress, fear, and protection levels go high, it shows that these two are going to end up divorced because they don't feel safe with each other. So the concept of creating trust and safety in a relationship is the utmost level of your key to be able to keep a happy relationship and a happy marriage. Because if you're going to keep creating this sort of a stress and non-trust and have to go back and protect yourself, after a while your body just doesn't take it. And you're just going to let go because you're not going to live in a system that is not suited for you. If it's a system that's constantly violating you, you're just going to live. So bids are pieces of information and the topics and things we do in order to reconnect. Because one thing is fighting, but isn't the makeup sweet, right? So it's like, how do we make up? How do we consistently come back? Even if we had an argument, if we had a separation, if we didn't see each other for a while, how do we come back and do that connection? Most of the time, people are trying this, but it kind of goes this way. They're not matching. And that's why people don't feel the connection anymore, right? So what are things like, that you could call that it's working as a bit for you? Some of them, when they get this bit, they move toward it. Some of them go away. Some of them attack. But usually when it's not, when people had fights, right? And they go into their own corners. Some person is still in a fight mode. Another person shifts and chooses to come back. And the person comes back and does some sort of a signal. The signal can be hi. The signal can be a touch. The signal can be bringing something. And the other one is still so furious. What do they do with it? Turn away. Reject it. And then what happens to the one who just came in to give? Feels hurt. Goes back. Right? So one more attempt for repair. Got destroyed. So remember, when you fight, open yourself up consistently for repair and reconnection. Because fights will happen. Disagreements will happen. But the point is how to do it appropriately, and then how to reconnect immediately.
But when the fight was, when the other person who now decides to come back doesn't make it right, doesn't do anything, but just comes back with a hi, that, how
It's
do
a
you do
start.
it? It's a start, but you say hi back, but still doesn't take the relationship back to where it was, or it's not recovery, it's not repair.
It's the beginning of the recovery and the repair. So it's not. There's no magical wand that suddenly, with one, movement of the wand, the whole thing becomes. There's no magic that comes and does this. We still have to start from the beginning. Somebody's got to knock. Somebody's got to open the door. Somebody's got to come in to even sit down. So if we just, every time somebody knocks, I ignore it, or if somebody knocks, I'll open the door and slam it back, I'm not inviting them to come in to sit down and do the rest. Does that make sense? So it's that piece of the...
But what if they think by just the hi they've done, there is no rest. Hi, let's go back to where we were.
Yeah. And then you bring your issue, your concept. Then hi, however, we still need to talk. Okay? So you take in the open door and then put your sense in. Okay? Some barriers into communication: inauthenticity. Sharing the holdbacks. There are things that maybe even you hold back because you think you're going to hurt the person, but ultimately you're lying. So any type of lying, even if you think they're white lies, it's going to hurt the relationship in the long term. People feel betrayed by being lied to. People feel like you're calling them stupid when you're lying to them. Okay? So that's basically what you do. You call them a liar. So lying will really, really, really get you. So stop lying. Even if you think that at this point is going to get you through, at one point it's going to come out. And when it comes out, it really, really hurts. Okay? Trust is like a paper. Once it's crumbled, it can never be perfect. So you keep trying to restore trust, but you keep trying to restore it. It's never going to come back to the same safety as the beginning. Okay? So clean it up. We all lie, by the way. I'm not saying that there's a saint that never lies. We all lie. We learn how to lie at age probably 2. We all manipulate. But clean it up as soon as possible. Try not to, and when you do, clean it up as soon as possible. Effective communication: make an appointment to communicate, speak clearly, directly, state your intention of the communication, state what you have observed, like you say, this is what I've seen. You came home and you were kind of aloof, you were thinking about yourself, and when you came in, you were, as much as I talked to you, you weren't listening to me. So I thought, you were mad at me. Are you mad at me? So you say what happened until you come to your conclusion. This is what I observed, this is what I thought, this is what my feeling, and this is what happened to me. This is what happened, and that's why then at that moment the person knows how you came up with this. right? But what do we do usually? The person comes, they're going through this, I make it up as they're pissed at me, and then what do? I didn't do anything wrong. They don't have anything wrong. They don't have any reason to be pissed at me. Oh, they're going to be pissed at me. Let me tell them how much I've been pissed at them and I haven't said something. So they come in and they're being in their own world, and you suddenly start with telling them how pissed you are. And they're like, what happened? Right? So it's just telling them what's going on would put them into that space. State your request clearly and tangibly. Listen only and openly and empathically. Listen with your heart. And listen with an assumption that your mate's intentions are really positive. When I usually ask people that for many, many years have been fighting, and one day they come and say, I no longer want to be in this and I'm thinking about divorce, two things usually happen. The first thing is they start looking at the intention of their mate in a negative way. You know, so far the beginning was always, their intention is good, it's okay, they made a mistake. At one point in a relationship, when it keeps continuing, then we ask and we question the intention. Oh, they purposely don't want to hear me. They always want to hurt me. Or, they want to hide their money because they want to do something. It's just something that we put in their intentionality as part of their character. And from there on, it's really downgrade. And then it's usually then we go into a hopelessness state, like we talked about in music. Paying attention, repeating what the other person says to make sure you've heard them the same way you ask them. If somebody talks, repeat them. This is what I hear you say. Asking questions, being honestly curious to who they are every day. Discussing important issues when you are not angry or upset. When you're angry, just calm down. You don't need to talk when you're angry. You're a mess when you're angry. Don't talk. You're going to ruin everything. Okay? So there are two times that it's great to close your mouth. When you're angry and when you actually want to lose weight, to close your mouth before you eat. That's what I've learned. Two times. You really need to just shut your mouth because it ain't working. Okay? Those are the times to choose those. Being committed to good communication. The best thing you can do is both people consistently be committed to good communication. The dynamics that happens between people, I don't know if you've noticed or not. Do you remember when you were a kid? You were a little kid and you reacted a particular way to your mom and you reacted a particular way to your dad, right? And then you come and go into an adult relationship with another human being, and the first time you don't like something, you act like that little girl toward your mom or dad again. Like we lose our adulthood somewhat, right? I've had so many clients who come into my room, and when I'm observing them and letting them know that you're attacking right now, do you know what they do? The same way we used to do in first grade. But he's doing it. But tell her stop it, right? So we need to, relationships are adult communication. It's an adult relationship. We've got to keep being in our adult place in order to have that communication going. What's needed and then for negotiation, right? And every day in your marriage, you're going to negotiate about something. Whether you like it or not, you're going to negotiate. And if one person always wins, the other person is going to feel resentment. They're just going to feel really, really resentful. Okay? So what you need to do is to learn how to negotiate well. And negotiation means A, bring all the information to the table. B, bring all the information. Then you bring all the information. The A comments on it, the B comments on it. One is here, one is here. You're supposed to come somewhere in the middle. And you got to allow that process to actually happen. Okay? Most of the people don't negotiate. They just want it their way. And that's what they fight and consistently fight. And there are also 5 languages of love. So because we're talking about how to be a lover and not a fighter, we talked about how to not get yourself into fights. If you get yourself into fights, at least know how to get yourself out and repair. Now it's like how to be the lover. Concept of a lover means express love, feel love. So you got to consistently generate love inside of you and then express it. People have a different way. The same way we differ from communicating, we differ about the way we give love and the way we receive love. and they're all okay. And we get with partners to learn the way they are and to extend themselves in that way, okay? So some people do it by words. They need to hear, I love you, and all sorts. You're beautiful, you're handsome, you're the greatest thing that's happened to me. Any type of beautiful word that we can consistently give each other, okay? I told a client that every day they woke up with each other, they actually, because they're consistently, their issue was they questioned being with each other. So every morning that they got up, they put the ring on each other's finger again and looked at each other and said, I choose you today. Because they were always worried. And what if the other one doesn't, wants to divorce? So it was every morning they reiterated, you're my love, I choose you this morning. For today, I'm choosing you. Okay? So it was constantly reminding them. Some people see it in quality of time. Sitting together, talking, having great conversation, going to movies together, going on trips together. Those are the beauty of being together. Receiving gifts, many people love, especially females, love receiving gifts. Men love too, but I think females like it more. Acts of service, things that you can do for the other person, cook for the other person, do their laundry, do something for them that they really need and love. And physical touch, which is the most one, which creates actually the chemicals of love, right? So even if you're pissed at each other, somehow try to touch. Even if you're sleeping together, start sleeping and touching each other, even though you're pissed, okay? Because that touch, that togetherness, will start bringing the softness back into your heart and the concept of the union. Never use these type of habits, which is criticism, blaming, complaining, nagging, punishing, bribing, comparing, belittling, threatening, I'm going to leave, being rigid, almost like I have to be right, and if I have to be in control, I have to be controlling. Those usually just creates a lot of resentment for the other person. They love you at the beginning, they might take it. Over time, it creates a lot of resentment, okay? And then replace them with supporting, encouraging, listening, accepting, trusting, respecting, negotiating, empowering, freeing, caring, and loving, and really having fun. Inside every hurting couple, there's an invisible emotional love tank that is running on empty. So if you're a person coming to you and somehow being vulnerable, they really want you to be there for them and give them some lovies. That's your job. That's pretty much your job, to give them some lovies. Okay? And the point of it is how to talk to your partner so that they can listen, and how to listen so that your partner will actually talk to you. This is the way to look at both aspects of it. Joy being a lover through effective communication. And most of all, remember, you got together because of joy, because of happiness. So don't forget it. You're the one who's got to keep creating the joy and happiness in it. Because if you don't, what was the point of all of this? Like, the whole point was to be able to bring that into your life. Okay? Thank you for your patience in listening, and I hope that you had fun and you've gotten some good skills. Thank you.